They're
Okay.
just gonna be piling in right now.
All right.
Um, but yeah, I'm super stoked to do this webinar with you. I feel like
Yeah, I
we need
know.
to rename it. Like it's not like a web, isn't a webinar like you share a screen and you show a slide? I don't know. We should be calling these like live podcasts or something like that.
Yeah. That's what I think you had originally called it, and we botched it when we were looking when we did the video and the marketing for it. But you
Yeah.
originally were calling it a podcast.
Yeah, it is like that. Civitano says hi. Welcome to the chat. Guys, get in the chat if you want to leave
Oh.
comments, compliments, anything. And chat with each other, chat with us. We got some hello. There we go. We got some highs
Hello.
in
Good
there. I
morning.
love our chat. I just put on LinkedIn that I think our webinars are so much fun. And I
Yeah.
specifically said I love our chat because I feel like people just jump in there and talk to each other, give each other advice,
Yeah.
and it's
Love
great.
an
Okay,
active chat. Makes it
Mark,
better.
we're gonna do an icebreaker so we can get to know you. This is just
Okay.
I'm just curious. What are you binging these days? What show are you binging these days?
What show am I binging these days? Um, that is a good question.
Who's got a good one? Put it in the comments.
I just started Shogun. So
I don't know
I,
Shogun.
it's a new one. It's on Hulu. I'm not really a Hulu guy, I'm more of a Netflix binge watcher.
Yeah,
Uh, I'm kind of boring, been into some documentaries lately. I'm kind of all over the place the way I absorb
documentaries are
information.
great.
I don't
Yeah.
watch a lot. There's not a lot of shows that I love right now.
Okay. Okay.
So
Well,
I'm
I
kind of
mean,
I'm kind of exploring. I'm looking for new options actually.
well, let's hear it from our crowd. I mean, we
Yeah.
have, first of all, Carolyn's watching The Chosen. I'm dying for season 4 to come out. I
Oh,
absolutely love The Chosen. It's one of my favorites.
I
Um,
heard that. I should just give it a try.
it's phenomenal. There's In the Dark, Unlocked. There's some good stuff in here. I'm watching right now. I have 2 episodes left, and I feel like I don't want to watch them because then it's going to be over. But I'm
Yeah.
watching Daisy Jones and the Six. Have you heard of it?
No, no, I haven't.
Anyone heard of Daisy Jones? Okay, it's on Prime and it's kind of like loosely based off Fleetwood Mac. Like it's like a band in the 70s where there's like relationships and drugs and like they go on
Oh,
tour.
wow.
It is phenomenal. It's so good.
What is it on?
It's on Prime.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the comments are backing me up on this one. People like Daisy Jones and this. The music is so good. And I just found out yesterday that
Yeah.
Daisy Jones is like the woman who plays Daisy Jones is Elvis Presley's granddaughter.
Oh, wow.
It's
Okay.
Lisa Marie's daughter. And I mean, I haven't fact checked that, but I mean, I believe
But you
it.
saw it on
So
Twitter. It's basically like a fact check.
exactly. Well, Mark, welcome to our webinar today. We are going to chat all about gamification, student retention, all the things because kids are bad. Kids are just
They're
I'm
not.
kidding. They're not bad. They're just different. So I think I sat in one of your presentations that Ab
Yeah.
has. And I was like, dang, I've been knowing Mark around the circuit, and I don't think I ever knew what course he did or what you did. And I just thought, I'm so excited to have you on today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I'm an executive here at CourseKey, original founder, part of the founding team. Um, and so that's kind of my background over the past decade. We've kind of dedicated tens of millions of dollars to making sure that anything a student needs to do and on the campus can be done from their mobile device. So
Awesome.
that's taking attendance, tracking quotas and evaluations and then now engaging with them through those mobile devices. So that's kind of my background over the past decade. Before that, I've had every type of job under the sun. Uh, and
Did
I'm
you
a
ever
son
work in
of
a
a
restaurant?
cosmetologist.
Did
So
you
I grew up in the barber shop. I'm a
you
son of
grew
a
up in a barber
cosmetologist.
shop? Okay.
Yeah, so I grew up in a barber shop. My
Cool.
mom did hair for about 20 years. And so I have a little bit of a personal connection with this sector specifically, just because I saw what it took to kind of put food on the table for her. So
I love
a little
it.
bit of
I love
background.
so it is personal for you. And of course, our crowd is mostly beauty schools.
Yes.
You said that you've done pretty much everything. So I'm super excited to get in with this Gen Z stuff with you. I
Yeah.
had a class on Gen Z. You sat in Mark and
Yes.
I, we had an agreement. I was like, you sit in mine and I'll sit in yours.
Yeah,
And he did a phenomenal job. I spoke
thank
about
you.
Gen Z being depressed and anxious, and that pivoted straight to your presentation on Gen Z. Let's go over some
Yeah.
Gen Z facts and these kids that we're enrolling today. Why are they different, especially compared to even 5, 6 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be drastic differences between generations, right?
Sure.
This one's accelerated because of the tech innovation, right? So this generation and the gap between the generations are significantly different because of the frequency in which we interact with technology,
Okay.
right? Previous generations, there were technology advances, but not everybody had access to it. So they were infrequent in terms of when we interacted with those technology advancements,
Mhm.
right? Now it's in everything you do, right? You go to the store and you order. You don't order from a person, you order from a kiosk. If you're going to a restaurant, you're checking out on a tablet, right? If you need to book something, you book it through your phone. If you're going to engage with somebody, you do it through this type of channel right now on Zoom, which before, if we wanted to give a presentation, we had to be in person. So almost everything that we do has some type of digital impact and footprint. And I think that's kind of one of the big differences there is just the frequency in which we interact with technology.
And
Now,
it's
with
not so much that the person has changed, rather than we've all had to adapt to this new world.
exactly. And so that goes across the generations. It's not just the students, but when you interact with technology, there's a lot of things that happen, right? Like not only is it impacting our behavioral patterns, which is kind of what the social media apps intentionally designed to do, right? With
Mhm.
psychologists and people who kind of train them and they train their technology to kind of influence our behavior, right? Because they monetize our time. So the more time in app, they make more money. And
Mhm.
so that was one thing that happened, and I kind of shelved that for a second. But the other thing is just it changes our expectations as people in terms of like we expect speed with everything, right? So students are the same way. We expect to know what we're doing, what needs to be done, and we need to know it now. We can't wait, right? It changes our experience. So if we
Yeah.
go to a restaurant and it's outdated and I can't use my card, you look at them differently, right? My
Mhm.
experience is different if they don't accept digital payments. Or if they don't allow me to split my check, I'm like, what? Why not? The last restaurant I was at allowed me to split my check, and I can't do that here. Why is that? So our expectations are different everywhere we go. And I think that's what a lot of schools are seeing with their students is their expectations are different because of the frequency in which they engage with technology.
But
So
schools, I mean, from my vantage point, a lot of them are not moving quick enough with the technology. They're just not.
yeah, and that's a great point, Jen. So there's although all this is happening, right? It could be scary for some, but others that embrace it and they embrace it right, there's a huge opportunity, right?
Yeah,
I've seen some schools grow from one campus to 20 organically and through acquisition by embracing technology. I've seen other go
sure.
from 45% retention to 90 plus because of adopting technology. But I want to hold there because I don't want to make it seem like you have to, because I think there's a lot of pressure to adopt the newest tech. So when I meet
Mhm.
with school operators and owners, they're some of them are adopting tech too fast, right?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
and they're not thinking about like, is my company prepared for this? Do I have strong practitioners and processes behind this? Is there a clear vision for why we're doing this? So staff kind of needs to understand the big picture before they go all in. So there's a little bit of there's a big opportunity, but I think it needs to be methodical and thought through. Organizations that I see thriving, they've thought through how am I going to manage change management, right?
Yes.
And others that I see that are drowning in technology are the ones that just adopted point solutions and didn't think about how they would all work together. And so,
Yeah, and I also have that fear before we really jump into the gamification side and
mhm,
retention in schools. I know that sometimes if you adopt it too soon, you don't know how to control it.
yes.
And so, you see that I have a friend that has a son in, I think he's in the 8th grade, and everyone is required to have their laptops on the desk in the classroom, every single person. And
Oh, it's
so
required.
what happens is these kids they're watching YouTube. And like,
Yeah.
that's the problem, is that
Yep.
he's consistently getting in trouble because he's watching YouTube in the classroom instead of paying attention, but they're not allowed to close their laptops. They have to stay open. So it's like, we're not teaching them these boundaries. So if you are going to introduce some of these technologies into your
Yeah.
classroom, someone put in, the comments, AI, for example, we
Yeah.
have to do it strategically and
Of
methodically so
course.
that we don't have the other problem of now they're too engaged in this other stuff and they're not paying attention.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you said it, he's in eighth grade?
Eighth grade.
Eighth grade, and mandated to use their technology
Yes.
all times.
All
Uh,
times. They're
so
Chromebooks.
the
They have to have them.
so then, that's the kind of behavioral trend that now when he gets older, he's going to expect some type of digital process when
You're
he goes
right.
to any grade level, whether it's second, continuing education, certificate programs. He's going to expect to be able to use his technology. That's one of the reasons why we started our company. We started out of college because we were forced to close our laptops. And I thought, this is insane. Why are
Mm,
we allowed to use these things in the classroom setting and access the resources that we need? So we were like, there's got to be a way of introducing technology to where it adds value to the school and it adds
agreed.
value to the students, because that's where I get all my information from. Saying I can't access it is like, that's not how I'm actually going to perform in the real world. So it's interesting that you said that, because now you said your son, or
No,
who's
my friend's son, yeah.
oh, your
And
friend's son.
that is the school district here, because I've talked
Yeah.
to other parents and other kids like at our church, and that's an expectation. They have to have their Chromebooks in every class.
Yeah, so then they're just going to expect that moving forward. So how do the schools
Sure.
manage that is the question, right?
Sure, exactly. Well, let's talk about some of the issues before someone works with CourseKey. Of course, you usually do some sort of introductory call, you know what's going
Mhm.
on. What are some of the challenges retention wise that you see happening in schools, specifically with beauty schools?
Specifically with beauty schools, a lot of it is just there's a couple different points, because there's a lot of things that, you can have issues with, whether that be pre-enrollment and like admissions, and like how am I engaging and getting people interested in my program. That's different. I think that's where you kind of specialize. But
Yeah, we've
for
done a
active
lot about that. Uh-huh.
Yeah, for active enrollments, right? The biggest challenge that I see, and this is kind of something that I spoke about in my presentation at ABHES, is access to critical data for self-retention. So there's
Mhm.
these self-retention models that some of our clients are seeing, where when they're giving students access to data through the channel that they're familiar with, which is their mobile device, they're self-retaining themselves,
Mhm.
which means now they know where they're at. I remember going through school and I assumed I only missed 3 days, right? And then I got my report and I was, you actually been gone for 7. It's like, God, I thought I only missed 3, right? But if you had access to that regularly, you would know where you're at. You would know where makeups need to take place. You would know where your grades are at, right? And if it's all centralized, you don't have to go from one system to the other and
Yeah.
combine all of this information. And so access to quality data is where I see schools have the biggest issue, which is why they engage with us.
Mhm.
Because once students know where they're at, there's some of them that can self-retain themselves. So that's one component of it. The other big issue is it's not necessarily just students. Um, some of these schools are having faculty and staff challenges with just managing processes manually. So some of them are transitioning from this paper and manual process to this new digital world. And that is, when you have manual processes or you're not digital yet, people don't have the visibility they need to take action. So that's normally the problem that I see with schools that are growing. Like they did really well with enrollments and now they're growing and now they have a lot more students and they're trying to figure out how to manage the leaky bucket. Right.
Sure,
So
sure.
it's a
Yeah.
transition from a paper world to a digital world is what they now realize that they need to do. Um,
So, let's talk about cosmetology school. You're in school for a year and you start and, you're super excited and you're showing up every day and you're afraid to go on a leave of absence. You're afraid to take off a day, but we all know that at some point these kids get a little tired of doing the same thing, especially
yeah.
once they hit the clinic floor. Once they hit the clinic floor, it's like, well, if I don't have a guest, I'm just kind of standing around and gossiping. I mean, of course, other
Mhm.
schools will have, demos and go work on a
Yeah.
mannequin and go do other stuff. Every school is a little different. Obviously, we don't just want them standing around doing nothing,
Yeah.
but some of them do. So let's chat about during that time when, you're a couple months from graduation, you're getting burnt out, you're tired of this, you just want to graduate already. That's where we see a lot of people, they stop showing up. So
Mhm.
let's chat about, because this was my favorite part of your presentation at APAS, what I really want to talk about are some of these ways that we can engage them attendance wise to finish on time. How
Yeah.
is CourseKey solving that problem?
Well, there's a component right now when I'm talking to schools and leaders and owners and operators, that the majority of their time is spent, it's the 80-20 rule. So 80% of their time is spent on 20% of the students, and that's when they're already at risk, right? So what they're trying to do is figure out who is not engaging, who is now having a downward trend in any type of pattern, whether it be through academics or through attendance. And they're only focusing on those folks because
Mhm,
that's all they have the bandwidth to do, unfortunately, right? Because getting to that 20% takes a lot of time and effort from faculty to figure out who that 20% is, right? And so they're only engaged with that 20%. What CourseKey kind of helps facilitate is nurturing everybody regardless of where they're at. So if they're in a good state, continuing to motivate and encourage them to stay in that good state. It's
mhm,
hard for some schools to do that naturally because, again, they have to focus on the people that they need to retain, because if they don't take action right now, they drop and lose that student. And then
mhm,
that student's stuck with the debt. The school doesn't get to, the completion rates that they want. So they have to focus on that bottom 20. But nurturing the other 80% is usually where they want to be, but they just can't because they don't have the time. And so what I've seen schools do prior to CourseKey, which is a good thing to do, it just get in the habit of trying to nurture those students, is saying, how can I motivate them regularly through
mhm.
just like scheduled nudges, scheduled interventions. Before, my co-presenter at ABHES, she had mentioned that she was doing these kind of twice a week, she was sending out these positive notifications to her staff and her students,
Yeah.
just saying, hey,
Via
you know,
text, right? It was just
yeah,
like a
via text,
motivation
just
Monday, like, yeah, just something that they
exactly.
would get on their phones. Right.
And part of my presentation was about, like, if you want to, action takes place when there's motivation, when
Hmm.
there's ability, and there's a trigger, a prompt, right? And
Yeah.
so if you want to do something, if you want to lose weight, if you want to have your house clean, like, you have to be motivated to do that. You have to be prompted to do that. Something's got to trigger that, right? And you
Hmm.
have to have the ability to do it. You can't clean your house if you're not at home, right? You can't lose weight if you don't have the right food and you don't have the right routine. So there's,
Hmm.
like, all these things have to kind of converge before you
Yeah.
can any of these things can happen. So what the school was focusing on is, like, let me help with the motivation side, because motivation's cyclical, right? Like, I could be motivated this week, but not next week. And
Hmm.
so the school was focused on, let me constantly try to motivate these students in any way that I can as of right now. And then let me focus on, prompting them regularly, frequently, so that they can keep their academics top of mind. Like, that's the thing. Jen, I don't know if you saw you did see my presentation, but there was a slide where it showed a mobile application and the students got TikTok notifications, they got Snapchat notifications, they have
Yeah.
Instagram. Think about your phone and all of those notifications. How many of those are academic related for your students? And if you think about, every day they're getting 100 notifications, and if none of them are coming from your school, then then you have to understand that that's why these students aren't paying attention and aren't prioritizing school,
Well,
right?
let's talk about the notifications because there's a lot to be said for that. It's that dopamine hit, right?
Yes.
You post on social, but then you obsess with who's liking it. How many likes do I have? How many comments do I have? Because it's that hit of dopamine. And
Yes.
so there's something about like attending class every day for 5 days straight. And then on Friday, you get a notification that says, congrats, you have a perfect week of attendance. It's that little,
Exactly. It's the reward.
yes.
So there's a great book called Hooked. And it basically just talks about you know, the transition of these apps and how they made sure that their consumers became hooked on their product.
Okay.
Okay. TikTok was like this. I've had the pleasure of meeting with the head of TikTok's product development. Um, and everybody kind of follows the same philosophy is how do I influence behavior is the first part. How do I make sure it's permanent is the second part. And the
Okay.
permanent side of it is the reward base, which is the dopamine hit. Because once you see that reward, you're constantly looking for it. And once that reward comes in frequently, then you're always looking for the next one. And
Mhm.
that's how you create permanent behavior. Right now, where a lot of schools are at is trying to just start with influencing it, right? How do I can't even, first I got to go digital so that they have access to this data. And it's a progressive, it's a process, right? I got to
Yeah.
go digital first. I got to make sure the data is accurate. And then I got to get in front of them on the channels that they're familiar with. And then after that, we can start talking through how do we gamify it to where it's permanent behavior and it's not just every time I nudge them. And
Yeah.
so I hope that kind of answers that question that you had is
For sure. Well, what I love about it is this is to me the difference between a Motivation Monday text and these dopamine hits.
yes,
Motivation Monday is it's about the owner, it's about the president, it's about the
yeah,
school. It's just like some general, like, great, we love a motivation, keep it
yeah,
going. But why these social apps succeed
hmm
is because it is focused on the person. These are the
yeah,
people that are following you. This is how many people like you. This is who
exactly,
commented on your post. It's all about you.
yeah,
TikTok, what's it called when you're scrolling? What is that? What is the page called? It's called a For You page, an FYP. It's an
yeah,
algorithm designed for you. And
yeah,
so that's the thing I think that schools are missing. You do have to make it all about them. Let's look at their grades. Let's look at their attendance. Let's see how they rank in the class. Let's see how many clients they had. Let's see how many Google reviews that
yeah,
mention their name that they had. You have to make it about them
of
and not
course,
just about here's a
yes,
foundation. Here's a quote by some, old guy from the 1800s. I just feel like that you can't just stop there. You got to make it about them.
yeah, no, that's right. And so the nudges need to be actionable,
Mhm.
right? And they need to be relevant. So to your point, if you're just spamming your students, they're going to opt out, which is what I've seen, right? We see clients that before they engage with CourseKey, they're like, hey, my email opt-in rate right now is 24%, right? Because students are opting out of my communications because, well, then the first question is, what are you sending them? And how
Sure.
often are you
What's the
sending them?
content?
Why? Why is that? Is it very generic? If it's generic, they're gonna get rid of that because everything else, like you mentioned, Jen, is personalized.
Yep.
And so, how do I send them relevant information that they would care about, that they can take action on, and or that they feel excited about or happy about, right? So there's these positive nudges that say great job, that's that reward, that's that dopamine hit. That means that somebody was paying attention to their positive behavior.
Mhm.
Schools want to do this, but they just can't. Like if I'm focusing on the 20%, I can't go tell this person, congratulations, you just got an A on your exam, right? Like
Right.
I, and instructors have
Congratulations for showing up for the 176th day in a row. Like you've been here every day. You're not going to focus on those people. You're so
no,
busy focusing on the people who are about to drop.
exactly. So what we're trying to do is, well, not what we're trying to do, what we're doing with schools are we're focusing on those nudges and positive affirmations that they can't. They
Love
just
it.
don't have the capacity to do. And then also serving up to them. These are the students that you should be intervening with right now because they're in a critical
Mhm.
state, right? So it's a combination of both. You need to be able to nurture students regardless of how they're performing so that they don't end up in that 20 percentile that you have to focus on before they drop.
Yep. Yep. I agree. So let's chat about the CourseKey platform then. So it's a platform that keeps track of hours, grades, all that stuff, correct?
Yes, correct. So, in the clock hour schools, they have to track time and attendance.
Mm.
So instead of biometric readers or scanners where the people are in line, They clock in using location-based technologies on their phone, similar to how you would with Uber, right? I'm here, come pick me up. This is where I'm at. As soon as they walk into class, I'm here. We can validate that they're at the campus. Great. And so that's just getting them familiar with using their mobile application every single day. They're comfortable with, they like it. They're used to doing everything on their phone. So if you're saying,
Sure.
hey, do this thing on your phone, you can see how much time you're accruing every minute, and you can see how much you had at the end of the day. Now they start their day with using their mobile device for academics at your campus.
Okay.
Once they're there, then they can track the other things, the services, the practicals, all of those things, and say, hey, I'm progressing based on everything that I need to complete this term or for this phase, or with just regardless, whatever my program's requiring, this is how I'm progressing towards that. So they have access and visibility into it. And so one of our beauty and wellness schools that implemented this, they did it for efficiencies and operations. What they saw was the students were gamifying it, because when they were missing class, they noticed their graduation date moved. And then they weren't graduating with their peers. And so they were like, hey, I don't want to not graduate with you, Jen. We're BFFs. I missed a
Sure.
couple of days. Let me make up these dates so that I graduate on time. These are the things that this was a byproduct of just giving them access to their own data, their personalized data.
Okay.
So I hope that kind of answered your
No,
question.
absolutely. So then let's talk about that gamification. Part of gamification is I want to win.
Mhm.
So how does that work when you have a class? Is there any element to this where it's like where you can set up almost like a leaderboard, or where they can compete against each other, or is it just personalized?
Great question. There is no leaderboard as of today. Uh,
Okay.
But eventually that's where we're going. It goes into this, the natural progression of products like these, right? Where it's like, first, let's just digitize what needs to be digitized. Let's visualize it, right?
Yeah.
And then let's start to intervene based on that data and make sure those interventions are automatic, not human driven. Once
Mm-hmm.
you get into the intervention side, then you can start to gamify it. Then you can start to make sure that, and I actually had a school come up to me after my presentation at AppHest, and they said, can you gamify this for my staff? Because my
Mm,
staff likes to compete naturally, right?
sure.
So can you tell us what staff's performing better than others? And we do have that for staff right now,
Okay.
where you can see which staff member has more at-risk students, which ones have high-performing students.
Mm,
And they're actually, I have some clients that are doing staff evaluations based on that data now. Uh,
interesting.
so
And
there is a
the students
gamification
though,
component, but not for students as of right now.
well,
But
they're probably just doing it on their own, Mark. You know that
yeah,
they're bringing up their phones next to each other and they're like, when's your graduation date? And what did you
yeah,
get on that? And they're probably already doing it naturally in the classroom. So,
they, they are.
yeah,
They are. And this is something, again, this was a byproduct. This isn't something that was intentionally implemented or focused on, but schools are reporting that these are the outcomes of it. I'll give you another example of, like, when the students have access to this data, what is it doing for them? So we had one client that kind of measured the effectiveness of this from March 23rd, March of 2023 to March of 2024.
okay.
In March alone, they saw 131 less drops than the year before. They sent out thousands of automations through our system, and they're contributing the majority of those saved students to this automated system now.
Mm,
And that was something that they did for their own board and for their own stakeholders, and they just shared this data with us. So we know it's happening if
mhm.
you leverage it properly and the students embrace it the way that we expect them to embrace it. But that's once students have it, again, like you mentioned, Jen, they're just gamifying themselves and they're keeping
Of course.
themselves on track because they're used to that, right? Your Fitbit, your Apple Watch, it tells you when to stand up, it tells you when to do things. And so if you think about your school and your organization, how often is your school telling them what needs to be done next without some staff member driving that communication? So
Absolutely. Well, I also love the idea of, you mentioned like the Apple Watch, which by the way, here's a life hack for you. So, every hour on the 50s, my watch tells me to stand up, and usually I'm in a meeting. So all you do is move your arm. You just have to move it for like 30 seconds and then you get a stand goal. So just a
So you're the person
little
cheating
half.
the system.
I have to
Got
close my
it.
ring. I have to. I've already closed one of my I've closed my exercise ring today, and I'm this close to closing my move ring. I'm only 90 calories away, and then I'm halfway to my stand goal. Yes, I'm a
So
cheater, Anthony. That's what I am. I'm a cheater here. But I want to chat about
that's so
kind of
funny.
that correlation. We are seeing a huge increase in depressed and anxious teens. 44% of Gen Z says they have a mental health issue. That's nearly half. Nearly half of Gen Z, age 12, 20 to 27, says they have a mental health issue. We know today, Mark, that mental health issues are becoming an increasing conversation, especially in schools, because we're dealing with this. How can we help? Naturally, I'm thinking this is how you help. Even the
Yeah.
reminder of like, have you just taken a minute to go stand outside and feel the sun? Have you gotten your
Yeah.
water today? Like, stop and take a drink. Like, even just notifications that remind people to take
Mhm.
care of themselves. I think this can almost help slightly help, solve that problem too. Are
Yeah,
schools doing
and
that?
I definitely agree with that. And so we have one school that says, you know what, how about we don't engage with them when the cumulative grade gets to a point that we don't like? How about we engage with them when we see like an individual disruption in their pattern? Like when we see like they've been doing well, and then there's this one thing, like this one exam, they didn't do well on. And I want to know that as a staff member.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're even honing in on the individual exams to say this student didn't do well. Let's actually send them a notification that provides them additional resources. Like, hey, we noticed you didn't do
Yeah.
well on this thing. Here's some additional resources on campus that you can leverage to make sure that you're successful on the next one. Um, Staff is also notified so that staff can engage with them and give a personal touch. What we're trying to do is say, let's get rid of the man hours that it takes to enter in this data so that staff can actually spend time engaging with their students more regularly, personally. Like you want to get rid of some of the things that technology can do, but the one thing that technology can't do is make your students feel like they're loved and welcomed in your organization. Only your staff can do that, right? So if you give your staff more time to do that,
Mm,
that could help them and students more frequently than at the very end where it's like, hey, you got a lot of work to do if you want to stay here. And that could be stressful, right?
yeah.
So it's getting in front of the problem well ahead of the event where it's like, hey, it's kind of it's D-Day. You got to figure out if you're going to do this or not. But it's kind of helping and supporting them along the way when there is a disruption in that positive behavior.
I love that you said that it's about getting ahead of the problem, because I feel like if you work in a school today and you're not seeing huge retention issues, it's
Mhm.
coming. It just is
Yes.
coming because, like we just said, eighth graders have to have Chromebooks. Like
Yeah.
it's coming, you guys. If it's not happening this year, it's going to happen next year. And so, I think getting ahead of it is smart. So just
Mhm.
you don't have to have a service like yours or start these things just when things are
No.
getting bad. That's actually probably too late.
Yes, exactly. And then it's just one of those things where we see that these changes are happening. You just mentioned that it's happening now at a young age, prior before them even coming to these schools,
Mhm.
prior to them going to these vocational degrees or certificate programs. They're experiencing technology early on. And
Mhm.
so the world is changing, and it's one of those things where it's almost natural selection, survival of the fittest, right? Like embracing it and adopting it in a way that actually provides a better experience for staff and students. Like you kind of have to do that. It's kind of we're at a point where if you have to play ball and you have to embrace these technologies, but not to replace people, not to replace that human touch, but to get rid of all the manual effort that it takes so that you can spend more time with your students.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just it's happening, the technology is evolving. So the schools that I see that are thriving, they're embracing it and they're preparing for it now, or they were preparing for it last year. So
Sure. Absolutely. Well, then let's chat about how time consuming this could be, because I'm sure a lot of people are like, I mean, I don't have time to message all these people. That's one of the things I like about CourseKey. At least I saw it in your presentation, right? You can schedule this stuff ahead of time. So you can sit
yes,
down, and I believe it was the woman you presented with. She's like, I sit down once a month and I write out what I'm going to send for my Motivation Mondays. And we already have in there the prompts that go out for the
yes.
attendance, for the grades. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so she actually does this so that she has peace of mind that she can take days off and things happen
Yeah.
with being there, right? The other component is, yes, I know that I need to constantly engage with my staff and my students so that they feel like they should focus on their academics. So that's kind of why she does that. But in our system, it can be scheduled or it can be event driven, right? An event being they did really well and there's an event, there's something that happened, let's congratulate them. Or
Okay.
hey, they didn't perform on this one thing, let's intervene with them. And so it could be event based, it could be academic based, it could be hey, you reached this part of your program and you need to complete this evaluation, let's get it done now instead of waiting, right? Like those are all events that take place where this automation kicks in and the students just are prompted that I have to do these things now that I'm here, right? Now
Okay.
that I'm at this hourly requirement, I'm at this phase of my program, these are the things I need to do next. And
Mhm.
that was another thing that my co-presenter had mentioned. Before CourseKey, she actually helped design what does it take to be successful in this program? Like, yes, everybody knows the minimum grade threshold. Everybody understands the hourly requirements, the policies. But what does it actually take to be successful in this program? Right? Like, what scores do you need to get on these
Mhm.
exams? When should you have these certain services completed by? And so she actually spends the time on designing that up front, and then all of these automations can be baked in with our system, right? Our
Okay.
system doesn't save the school. If you're like, we don't just do these things and fix things without there being some intention behind it.
Mhm.
So she does a good job of designing what does success look like and then automating that process through our system.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Is this an app that every student downloads, or is it a mobile website? How does it work?
Yes, so every student downloads and installs this app. Our application can be accessed through any web browser though. So
Okay,
students can use this from just a Chrome browser if they need to. Most students download the app because we
okay.
do use location-based services. And to use location-based services in GPS, you normally have to have an app installed. Um, but yeah, you can access it from any web browser, and that's the same for staff or students.
And so because of that, I mean, there's bad weather tomorrow, any of that kind of stuff. Like you can send out across the board to different cohorts of people, or just AM classes, just PM classes. You can, is this how a lot
Yes,
of schools also then just like message in mass all of their students?
correct.
Okay.
Correct. So it could be one-to-one or
Hmm.
it could be one-to-many, right? So staff and students can interact one-on-one through the application, or you can just do broadcasts.
Yeah. Okay. Very
So
cool. Well, I want to chat about some of your clients. So I know
uh,
you guys work with beauty schools. Is this something newer to your, because you work with all career schools, vocational schools, is that correct?
yes, yes, we have a clients cross sectors,
Okay.
allied health, trades, but beauty and wellness. Um, we have hundreds of beauty and wellness
Seems to
clients.
be growing for you guys. I mean, we hung out at AACS. You were at the
Mhm.
beauty school show there. So chat with us about some outcomes that you've seen working with beauty schools.
I think the best thing in terms of outcomes is just the collaboration with the beauty schools. Some of the franchise organizations are really acquiring and scaling and growing.
Mhm.
Uh, and they come to us as their innovation partner to say, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Can you do it? And so we sit down and see, does that apply to everybody? Is this just applicable to your franchise or your school group? Or does this apply to everybody? And so they've actually helped us really innovate on our products. And so that was one of the, I think, the best outcomes. is that we intentionally designed some of our core products with the collaboration of these beauty and wellness schools, multiple of them, not just one franchise, but multiple
Yeah,
franchises.
no, I know you guys work with a lot of schools. Yeah.
Yeah, to develop these products that replace these paper processes that they have now. So
Mhm.
we know it's directly applicable because they help co-develop it.
Cool.
So that was one of the best outcomes. And then of course, if they're a part of the solution, once they implement the solution, you see all these downstream impacts, right? People are happy, staff's happy. That was another thing that I saw is staff was hard to keep and hard to acquire
Mm,
because when you when you're a lecturer or you're an instructor at a cosmetology school, you went to school to be a barber or a cosmetologist or a nail tech, right? Or esthetician. You didn't you didn't become a teacher to do all of this manual data and all these manual processes. You went there to teach, right? And so what we're trying to do is say spend more time teaching, less time on this other stuff. And so that was the other positive outcome is a lot of schools had a staff retention
I
issues.
was just gonna say, oh my gosh, because one of the top problems right now happening in schools, I actually did a webinar on it last year, I think, is retaining staff, specifically instructors. It's one of those are the positions that are always, always open.
Yeah,
Schools are struggling to get in instructors. This sounds like it would be attractive if if you are hiring
correct.
instructors to say like you don't have to do any of this manual
Ex-
work. Like we have an app that will do this. It will put, do the push notifications. You focus on what you're good at and we'll help you.
Exactly. And it goes back into like how technology is impacting all of our expectations, not just students, but
Mm,
staff.
hmm.
Staff expects there to be some level of sophistication and digital footprint for the things that they have to do, right? They expect technology to take away some of these manual processes. And so when you can incorporate that and say, hey, this technology will support you and save you 2 hours a day, and you can spend those 2 hours with your students, which are going to have better outcomes, in which that's the part of your job that you like more than anything. That's attractive to staff. And so the staff retention was another byproduct of just digitizing these things that were paper previous to us.
Yeah, I think that's great. And then is
Uh,
anyone using this platform to engage with alum like after they graduate, or is that usually when they delete the app? Just curious on that because I know that
yeah.
alum communication is something that schools always want and then it just falls off.
Yeah, so we do have some placement workspaces to kind of help manage and track placement where it's taking place, where folks being placed, who's still left to be placed.
Okay.
And you can manage communications from there. They can complete like placement forms and things like
Cool.
that. But in terms of managing like alum that have graduated a year or two out ago, they're not really leveraging it that way, but they could.
Mm,
We haven't seen clients use it in that manner yet. Because again,
yeah.
right now, the main focus is on active enrollment right now. I'll tell you why. In 2022, we surveyed hundreds and thousands of people on what was important for them for 2023. And the main concern in 2022 was increasing enrollments. Like that was the big push. That was the big focus for 2023 is increasing enrollments. Wall Street Journal just put out an article and said, now students and parents are looking more towards trades and vocational programs, right? So there is a shift in mindset. And the reason for that is that students want hands-on, um, they want to enter into careers that aren't going to be impacted as much by AI, right?
Sure.
And so there's all these surveys and studies and all this information that's dropping that white collar jobs are the most at risk jobs to be replaced by AI.
Hmm.
And so, the younger generation is seeing that. And so trades is attractive again,
It
which it
is.
it wasn't before. Have you ever seen the show Dirty Jobs by Mike Rowe?
Oh yeah. And I heard him at CQ a couple years ago.
Yeah,
With
Korsky
the
brought him
keynote.
out. Well, we sponsored Mike Rowe to bring him out.
That's right, you did. Which, by the
Yeah.
way, side note, that was like one of my favorite keynotes. The year before, it was Martha Stewart. And then, like, do you remember this? Do you
Yeah.
remember when it was Martha Stewart?
Yes.
She was the keynote. And the whole conference, everyone was like, oh my God, Martha Stewart's coming. Martha Stewart's coming. Martha Stewart's coming. And then all of a sudden, like a screen dropped and she was on Zoom. And
Yeah,
everyone in the room collectively was like, what is this?
she's
She's
not
on
even here.
Zoom. And so when Mike Rowe was there, we're like, oh, great. Mike Rowe's going to be on a big screen. But no, you actually had him there. It was
Yeah, yeah, he was expensive to get out there, but we brought him out there. You know,
really...
what Mike Rowe had talked about is like growing up when he was younger, right? He said that he remembers going into his high school office and it's showing that big poster that said, work smarter, not harder.
Mm,
And there was you were either dressed in like a graduation gown in college and you were working smarter, or you were covered in oil in this like blue collar job. And he goes, that's where the mindset started to shift
sure.
for the next generation to say, if you want to work smarter, go to a 4 year.
Mm,
Don't work harder and end up in some trade. So that was a mindset that took place for 20, 30 years where people were like, yeah, I want to work smarter, not harder. So I don't like trades are bad, right? Certificate
yeah.
programs are bad. Now there's this mindset, and that's shifting because of AI,
Hmm.
where people are like, hey, those are jobs are at risk right now. A lot of those management level white collar jobs are at risk right now.
Hmm.
So where am I least likely to be impacted? It's the hands-on vocational industry. And so there's a
Hmm.
mindset where people are shifting over to these types of degrees. So enrollments are up now.
Yes.
And so I started off with in 2022, the big focus for 2023, according to owners and operators, said they got to focus on enrollment. The good news is that society's mindset is shifting towards this is a good, viable career now,
Yeah,
right?
what a great time to be in the industry, right? I mean, it's for
Definitely.
real. Like, there's never been a better time. Our last webinar last month was on high school recruitment. It was phenomenal. We had a marketing director of a 15 campus school come on of Tricoci. Her name was Joy, and she
Yeah.
shared how like people are sleeping on high schools. She's like, get in the high schools. These kids actually want to go to trade school now.
Yeah, they are. And so, yeah, there's this big shift now that's happening.
Yeah.
And so since they were successful in 2023, increasing enrollments, and now there's this mindset that's happening across the board. You know, the big focus now is like, how do I retain these students? How do I keep
Mhm.
them here? How do I make sure that they're happy? How do I make sure that I'm giving them curriculum that they can apply immediately? That's what because of the attention span issue, right? They want to be able to apply anything that they're learning in real time. That's how these students are right now. And I think
Mhm.
these industries in this particular, especially with beauty and wellness, they have a big opportunity to do that right away. And so, yeah, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but
No, I think that's great, Mark, because I have been doing marketing and admissions training for years. I was an independent consultant before I worked here, and a school had hired me to be a consultant for like 6 months and help turn things around and increase enrollment. And it got to the point where like I was interviewing staff, I was seeing all this stuff online, I was doing the ads, I was helping them. And I sat in with the president of the school and I said, here's the issue right now. I can, I don't know if you remember Fire Festival. Do you remember Fire
yeah,
Festival?
I do remember Fire Festival.
Okay,
I was,
I used to say I could Fire Festival your school. I can get a bunch of people here, but you're going to serve them cheese sandwiches and then it's going to be worse for you. Like that
yeah,
was always my thing. I'm like, I can Fire Festival any school. I
yeah,
can change your marketing. I can change your admissions team. We will fill this school. But at some point, if you aren't delivering, they're going to go online and it's going to be 1,000 times worse for you. And I
yes,
mean, I told the president of the school, he didn't want to hear it. He was
yeah,
almost mad at me. He was just like, this is not why I hired you. Fill
yeah,
the school. And exactly, like, it's like I had a freaking crystal ball. What I said is exactly what happened. They
yeah,
killed it. They had a record year of enrollment, and then they had a record year of drops, of
yeah,
online reviews that were terrible, of staff that was quitting. It was just like, and this is the problem, I think, when every school is focused on enrollment,
yeah,
at some point you're going to be serving cheese sandwiches. Like you
yes,
really got to get back to the basics of how can we keep people happy, which by the way, y'all, your marketing budget will literally be slashed in half
uh-huh,
if you do this because your referrals, your online reviews are going to be so, so good. You're not going to have to spend money on all this other stuff. I
I
shouldn't say
know.
that because I'm a marketer. Oops, beauty schools directory.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about your budget being slashed for a little while. You
Yeah.
got to see the benefits of this, right?
Yeah, no,
But
for sure. But focus on retention. This is
yeah,
how we get people to, just build a pipeline of referrals, and there's so much to be said for online reviews, right? Like when kids are happy, they're going to go shout it from the rooftops.
yeah, they're gonna say that. That's kind of why we have a 5-star review on our app. But
I love it.
that's a
Well, actually, someone did ask in the comments, how can schools work with you? Obviously, you're not free. You guys are a
yeah,
vendor.
yeah.
You guys service schools, but how do people work with you today?
There's a lot of ways to get in touch. You can message me directly. Mark@CourseKey.com. If you're interested, you want to learn more, we can talk about what your school needs are and if there's a good fit for our products.
I'm gonna
Um,
put that I'm gonna put
yeah,
that right here in the chat for people, and that's Mark.
LinkedIn. Yeah,
LinkedIn, yeah.
LinkedIn, our website, right? You can go to CourseKey.com and you can request a demo. Tell them Mark sent you, and I'll make sure you're taken care of.
Love it.
So, you can connect with me directly through LinkedIn, through email, through CourseKey.
Mhm.
I'll put it in the chat as well. It is CourseKey.com. You can see some of the testimonies if you'd like. You can look at our
I'm
application.
reading them right now in the chat. People are saying they use you and love you.
Oh,
I'm
great.
actually
Thank
currently
you.
reading. Yeah, yeah. You have a lot of clients that are happy.
Oh, nice. DeHart, yeah, in Northern California. Awesome. They have a little video on our website.
Oh, cool.
Thank you. Um, I don't know if we have time for Q&A or if there's anything else you want to touch on,
Yeah, I
Jen.
mean, we've been Q&Aing the whole time. If you guys have additional
Okay.
questions, we have a few minutes left. Put in the chat, share with us. Mark's going to be at several shows this year. And so our beauty school community specifically, a lot of them go to CQ. I know you'll be at CQ,
Yes,
right? Are you going to C-SPEN this year?
I believe so. We're going to
Okay.
be sponsoring the backyard party at CQ. So
Fun.
there's going to be a kind of a tailgate party, not a backyard party. That's the wrong phrase
Okay,
there. Yeah,
cool.
there's going to be a tailgate party at CQ, and a bunch of games and entertainment and food and drinks. So please come visit us
Can
there.
I tell you guys the worst thing about CourseKey is that I was in Vegas with their team, and I was like, hey, with a couple of them, I'm like, let's go hit up the slots. And one of your programmers was like, those things are designed to take your money. It doesn't work. I know we gotta work on the back end of the. I'm like, shut up. You're ruining my life. Just
I know.
talk.
I was with him at the CAPS conference a couple of days ago, and same thing. I was like, I'm gonna hit the tables. He's like, I'll go watch you lose.
What a buzzkill. But he's the smart one, right? Because we're the
Yeah,
ones
he was
with our
smart.
money. So
Yeah, and he was right. I ended up losing.
he
So
was right.
so I was like, but I had fun doing it. All right.
Oh, that is so funny. Guys, this will be recorded, and you will get an email link to this tomorrow morning in your inbox, and then it will sit on my website, jenlyles.com. It'll sit on the Beauty Schools Marketing Group YouTube page. Follow me on LinkedIn. I'll put the recording there. We record all of our webinars. This has been so fun, Mark. I really enjoyed
Yes.
having you.
Thank you. I enjoyed it as well. And thanks to all credit goes to the listeners and everybody who took time out of their busy day to come and join us. So thank you so much. And
Absolutely.
I look forward to talking to each and every one of you individually later. So
Sounds great.
yeah.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Join us next month for a webinar. We will be getting the email out for that soon, and we'll see you at shows coming up. It is conference season. We're going to be at NACAS. We're going to be at FAME. We're going to be at the SPEC conference. We're going to be at AACS, MAX, FAPS. We're just going to be hitting the road wherever there's a casino. So we will.
Yes. And I just want to answer one more question I saw that was in the chat is what
Yeah.
book was I referencing? I referenced Hooked and Tiny Habits. That'll let you know the psychology behind all this stuff if you're interested, because I think it directly applies. So
Love
sorry to
it.
cut you off there.
Thanks for that, Mark. I appreciate it. We'll see you guys next month. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.